So I hope you'll be able to hear me. I'm in the park, and there is a little bit of background noise, but not much. And so today our topic is innocence, which affects the rest of our life when it gets taken or robbed or destroyed, which is, again, a belief. Not again, but I'm sorry, we have to start with saying innocence affects the rest of our life. These are beliefs about innocence. When it gets taken, robbed or destroyed, a part of the self stops growing naturally or organically. Again, this is beliefs about innocence. We explore without attachment, expectation, slowly, or we can make a beeline, an expressway toward a specific outcome or experience. Innocence hasn't experienced it before. It slowly explores. Innocence has fuzzy boundaries, flexible. There's a bouncy resilience versus when there's been a broken truth, a ruined safety, a perverted trust. Possessing innocence is like being on the outside. It's impossible. It comes from within and is not excusing it. Like when we give grace to someone, in other words, we could see that it's like a costume, but we don't excuse people who violate in order to preserve a world where people don't manipulate or hurt because they could. So in other words, people who manipulate or hurt just because they could might make us feel uncomfortable. We don't want to live in a world where there isn't that innocence. We want to preserve a world where people don't do that. However, we cannot excuse it while we're giving grace. We also cannot reduce people, each one is a whole world, to a few minutes of their power and control, like if that was what they did. Additionally, pleasure for people who objectify the human. Instead, we have to hold responsible the traumatized people who did not heal and did to others what was done to them. And additionally, innocence with we need to protect the young girls from a young age. If someone can't say no too young, or they're being coerced because their parents are very, co-opting and forced compliance, then what's going to happen when they're older? It's programmed into the nervous system. It's not a conscious language thing. The reduction of self-worth and dignity at the moment of degrading and exploiting is a forever thing. It cannot unhappen or uninform our self-concept, self-image. So we may heal from it, but it never will have not happened. We have to grieve for the self that is a younger version with less history, accumulated time and experience, that never got to go for certain opportunities or try certain things, and it may be too late for certain things. Instead of the predatory kind of self that looks for that from a more naive or innocent person that's less impacted by life. So instead of trying to take it from a young person, and here we're talking about we want to tiptoe on eggshells around this, but some people have been aware of, like, someone who wants the innocence from another person, God forbid, could fall into the category of an exploiter or a pedophile or a rapist. And then we have this idea that Judaism talks about what is a halachic union between a man and woman. There's something called Kedushin. Kedushin 2a from Kabbalah, from Gemara Talmud, teaches, and so Kedushin. So yeah, let's hear. So teaches that there are three ways for halachic union. One is kesef, which is money. Two is shatar, which is a document, and three, which is bia, which is sexual relations. There has to be two witnesses that see the man and woman in seclusion, and he says she's consecrated to him through the sexual act. The witnesses of seclusion are considered witnesses of sexual relations according to Beis Hillel, which is the house of Hillel during the time of the Talmud. And according to Beit Shammai, the house of Shammai, we don't say that witnesses of seclusion are considered witnesses of sexual relations. The Rambam, Maimonides, says we don't generally assume one who secludes with an unmarried woman does so with the intent of marriage. So that's why we don't consider them to be married in any manner, if just because they were alone. Then, so what's following innocence is coming to terms. So coming to terms with some big things like, but before we do that, we have to talk about if we feel our innocence was taken. So there's this, after we do that, we can talk about the unrobbing to get back to the innocence. So coming to terms, we take a pause in our innocence discussion, and I think about my own life, but you could also think about your life. So me stopping to smoke weed and engaging in premarital sex, smoking cigarettes or indulging in alcohol, wearing provocative clothes to feel desirable or sexy, etc., in order to focus on pleasure of Hashem, or that oneness, that union that is according. Halacha means law, I mentioned before about man and woman. So the law of the union that is sanctified for long-lasting happiness, yet I feel less pleased and happy with it and in serving Hashem to be honest. This is what I wrote about a year ago. Additionally, I sacrificed my relationship with Michael for Hashem, who made it clear that he didn't want me to be with an uncircumcised man out of love for Hashem and submissive awe. I stopped the relationship, but it made me less in love with and amazed by Hashem. So, in a way, coming to terms with the fact that, there's the light side and the dark side of innocence. Then we have I had a talk with this man named Jeremy. We talked about innocence and unrobbing. So lashing out in anger, hurting, humiliating the way made to feel powerless. But the way we were made to feel powerless by someone else. Why would someone who pretends to like me be doing that to me? They can't help it. When we blame the person, they could blame the person that they hurt. We could blame the person that they hurt because, of the guilty feeling. So it's seeing the victim as forcing them to face their ill will. So in other words, they couldn't help themselves. So it's like, oh, we blame the lady who wore the sexy clothes for the man that raped her because he was so turned on. Or we left money outside and we say, oh, the guy stole it, because he was so tempted, he couldn't control himself. Rather than them face the fact that they wanted to do something that might have been wrong or cause harm. Think about justice and righteousness and mercy. These are in Torah, 3 pillars to a world that could last. Want to talk about, the money example. A lot of people place money higher than life, whether it comes to people who have prescription companies, pharmaceuticals, and so on. And, we're not supposed to be here to kill our will. There's this moving energy versus staying present. And both are choices. We could stay present with the movement, or we could be moving and find the stillness in it. And that's really what yoga usually is all about. When we do people pleasing, it's because it's is it being challenging that makes it more valuable? Do I want a world where I don't have to improve to be loved? There's this risk of being shunned that we all have to face. So this idea that any Groucho Marx says, any club that would have me, I don't want to be part of any club that would have me as a member. So it's it's more valuable because it's hard to get. But that's a person who's always moving just out of reach or keeps changing the target just a little further. You never feel like you quite hit it. You're always trying to get that approval or that direct contact. So think about anything that's classless can be taken into life uncategorically because there is no class that it has to fit into. So this is a kind of unrobing of the innocence. When we adult the kid, it's narrative mode. We ask or take a kid into the future or past. So that's a way to we go into oh yeah, you're feeling really tired now. Oh, you're feeling really hungry. And we could actually ask the kid about the future, the past, and we take ourselves there. We can do that in our own self, and that's also a type of innocence. We cannot make up should or shouldn't about food because that creates attachments. And if someone causes me to have violent thoughts many times, it means that it's for my enjoyment, really. My brain is trying to say, here, I want you to enjoy this because they showed me how violated the images showed me how violated I felt. And I shouldn't scold myself for it. I have to say, oh, well, now that I don't need to repress the lesson that my contract ended with that person and get off the ride of the voluntary suffering. And so the brain will show images of them suffering as if to show us that they're punished, I used to, because I used to be so ashamed when I had someone who really I felt wronged me, and then I had these images in my head of violent things happening to them, and I didn't like it. It made me uncomfortable. Talking about salt. So there's this idea of salt in the wounds, right? But we could think salt can be something that's fresh. It's like a balm. It's unpretentious. It's preserving, grounded, relatable, practical. And think about, so there's breakthrough, which lets us in the becoming, in the beginning. Sometimes the salt can help us to break through it, draws us, our fluidity out and through. Versus breakdown is there's no construct as the core self is adapting. During this transition, the inner self doesn't change. It's dripped in gold. It's dipped in gold. It has this inner sanctum that nothing could get through. Just a moment, a siren. I want to share, about my father who who wanted all the recognition and to be heard and smiled and seen as beautiful always, and versus us, the children, the innocent ones. We weren't. He was like trying to get his innocence, competing with us. And so that, you know, when we look at this choosing based on loneliness, we want comfort when it's not given. We're needy. There's self-rejection. There's the core wounds, but they're actually as lonely, if not lonelier than me. So when I choose someone because I'm lonely, their loneliness is going to be allowing them to be with someone who's only choosing them because of loneliness. They're just with someone, anyone. You could see how that could cause ending up in even more disappointment. And then finally, we have this idea of linear and associative as male and female. So the associative is like intuitive, receptive, while the male is like naming and generative. Generative like as a line, like straight, like shooting out of itself. So I think we'll stop here. We have explored innocence, and I will do another video in a couple because I want to do one for Friday. I'm working tomorrow the whole day and I won't have time, not the whole day, but like till before Shabbos, where I have other things to do, so I won't be able to do it. All right, bye bye.